The XLR Dominion had always been proud of its military strength. Their soldiers were elite, their technology far superior to most species in the galaxy, and their warships capable of reducing planets to dust. But despite all this, fear gripped their high command when the distress call arrived from the outpost on Virex 7. The message was garbled, filled with static and panicked voices, but one thing was clear: a single human had arrived, and everything was falling apart. No one had expected this. Humans were still a relatively new species in the galactic scene, known for their resilience and unpredictability, but they had never been seen as a true threat. They were still considered primitive compared to the grand empires that ruled the stars. That belief shattered the moment the XLR forces encountered their first real human opponent. Virex 7 was a jungle world, humid and dense with vegetation. The XLR had built their research facility here, hidden beneath thick canopies and shielded by advanced cloaking technology. No enemy should have been able to find it, let alone infiltrate it. But somehow, the human had. The first sign of trouble was the silence. Communication with the outer perimeter guards had suddenly ceased. When the command center tried to contact them, all they received was static. Surveillance drones sent to investigate showed nothing, just an empty jungle where the guards had once stood. Then, the screams began. Short, sharp cries of terror echoed through the speakers, cut off before anyone could understand what was happening. The XLR officers in the control room, hardened warriors who had fought countless battles, felt a chill run through their spines. Something was out there, something that moved unseen, something that hunted. A squad of heavily armed soldiers was dispatched to search the perimeter. They were the best of the best, wearing advanced combat armor and equipped with weapons capable of melting through steel. Their scanners were active, their movements careful. But the jungle was too quiet. No birds, no insects, not even the rustling of leaves. It was as if the entire world had gone silent. Then, without warning, the first soldier vanished. One moment, he was there, scanning the trees with his rifle raised. The next, he was gone, no sound, no struggle, just an empty space where he had stood. Panic surged through the squad. They switched to thermal vision, hoping to spot whatever was out there, but all they saw was the endless heat of the jungle. Another soldier screamed, his body yanked into the darkness before he could fire a shot. The squad leader barked orders, trying to keep his men together, but the fear was spreading fast. They had fought in countless battles, faced monstrous creatures and deadly machines, but never had they encountered something like this, a predator that moved unseen, striking with terrifying precision. Back in the command center, the officers watched in horror as their squad's vitals blinked out one by one. The human had no energy weapons, no visible technology, nothing that could be detected by their scanners, yet he was eliminating their best troops like a phantom. Desperate, the High Command ordered an orbital scan of the jungle. The results only deepened their fear. The human was moving through the trees at a speed no XLR could match, evading every attempt to track him. He was toying with them, studying them, and eliminating them one by one. The XLR were predators in their own right, an empire that had conquered countless worlds, but now, for the first time in their history, they knew what it felt like to be hunted. Evacuation orders were issued. The research facility was too important to lose, but if they stayed, they would all be dead by morning. Dropships were prepared, soldiers gathered at the landing zones, but just as the first transport lifted off, it exploded in midair. Sniper fire. A single shot, fired from an unseen location, had struck the ship's engine, sending it crashing back into the jungle in a fiery wreck. The remaining dropships hesitated. No one wanted to take off, knowing they could be next. Panic spread like wildfire. The officers screamed at the pilots to launch, but hesitation had already taken root. And in that hesitation, more fell. The human moved through the jungle like a ghost, picking off anyone who strayed too far from the group. The XLR soldiers, proud warriors of their empire, were reduced to frightened prey, their numbers dwindling by the minute. One officer, a veteran of 100 battles, finally understood. Running would not save them. This was not a battle they could win with technology or numbers. This was a hunt, and they were the hunted. In desperation, He activated an emergency distress beacon, sending a message to the Galactic Council. He didn't care about the political consequences. If the other empires refused to acknowledge the danger of humanity, they were fools. Because here, in the depths of this cursed jungle, the truth was clear: you should never run from a human. It only makes the hunt more exciting for them. Fear had settled deep into the hearts of the remaining auxiliary soldiers, gripping them like an unrelenting vice. The thick jungle of Virex 7, once a place they had navigated with ease, now felt like a monstrous entity, its towering trees and dense undergrowth conspiring against them. Every leaf that rustled in the wind, every shifting shadow among the vines, sent waves of panic through their ranks. Their numbers had dwindled alarmingly fast, and no one knew exactly how many were left. The human had turned this battlefield into a nightmare, hunting them with a patience that was unnatural, striking with an efficiency that defied logic. No scanners detected him, no drones located his position, and no traps slowed his approach. He was always there, somewhere in the darkness, watching, waiting. The Exilari were an advanced species, their military disciplined and their weapons powerful, but none of their training had prepared them for something like this. This was not war. This was not a skirmish. This was a hunt, and they were the prey. In a desperate attempt to regain some control, Commander Virex, one of the highest-ranking officers still alive, gathered the remaining forces in a clearing deep within the jungle. He barked orders, forcing his terrified soldiers into defensive formations, creating a perimeter with automated turrets and motion sensors. This was their last chance. They had to regroup, had to think, had to find a way to fight back. But even as he spoke, he could see the fear in their eyes. The Exilari were not cowards. They had fought in brutal wars and crushed rebellions across the stars. Yet this single human had broken them in a way no enemy ever had. Virex clenched his jaw, trying to suppress his own fear. He needed to be strong, needed to make them believe that they could still survive. But deep inside, he knew the truth: this wasn't about survival anymore. This was about how long they could delay the inevitable. The jungle around them was eerily silent. The night had fallen completely, swallowing the world in darkness, broken only by the glow of their equipment and the pulsing red lights of their turrets. The temperature had dropped, an unnatural chill seeping into their bones. Something about this planet had changed, as if the jungle itself had become aware of what was happening, as if it too was afraid of the predator lurking in the shadows. The motion sensors remained quiet, the turrets pointed outward, scanning for any sign of movement, yet everyone felt it: the unseen presence watching them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The soldiers huddled closer, gripping their weapons tightly, their claws clicking against the metal. They had expected an invasion, perhaps a battle against human forces armed with starships and war machines. Instead, they had been reduced to frightened creatures hiding in the dark, praying they would not be the next to disappear. Then it began again. A distant scream tore through the silence, sharp and filled with agony, before cutting off abruptly. Every head turned, every weapon raised, but there was nothing. Just the empty jungle, stretching endlessly into the unknown. Panic surged through the soldiers, some of them stepping back, others whispering hurried prayers to their gods. Virex cursed under his breath. The human was playing with them, taking them one by one, never showing himself, never giving them a chance to fight back. He needed to do something, needed to take control before they all lost their minds. He activated his communicator, issuing commands to the turrets, setting them to fire at anything that moved beyond the perimeter. If the human was out there, he would be forced to reveal himself. But the moment he finished speaking, the lights flickered. A low hum vibrated through the air as the turrets, one by one, powered down. The motion sensors went dead. The energy shields surrounding their camp collapsed. The human had cut the power. Virex barely had time to react before another scream echoed, this time much closer. A soldier near the edge of the clearing turned in horror as something too fast to see grabbed him and yanked him into the darkness. The only thing left behind was his rifle, clattering uselessly against the ground. Chaos erupted. Soldiers opened fire in all directions, their plasma bolts illuminating the jungle in flashes of blue and green, but they hit nothing. The jungle swallowed their attacks, and in return, the humans struck again. Another soldier fell, then another. It was happening too fast. The XLRE warriors, once so confident in their technology, in their weapons, in their superior numbers, were being ripped apart like helpless prey. Virex tried to rally them, tried to give orders, but no one was listening. Fear had taken over, and now they were running. The discipline that once held their ranks together had crumbled. Soldiers sprinted into the jungle, abandoning their comrades, desperate to escape this nightmare. But that was the mistake. That was exactly what the human wanted. The jungle came alive with movement, the shadows shifting as the hunter pursued them. Virex saw it now, clear as day. This wasn't some random attack. The human had been waiting for them to break. He had been pushing them, manipulating them, forcing them to scatter so he could pick them off more easily. Realization came too late. One by one, those who ran vanished into the darkness, their screams lost in the depths of the jungle. The few who remained in the clearing, frozen with fear, were no safer. A sudden impact sent Virex sprawling to the ground, his visor cracking as something heavy landed next to him. He scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding as he turned his weapon toward the source of the attack. And for the first time, he saw him. The human stood just a few meters away, shrouded in darkness, his face partially hidden beneath a hood. There was no heavy armor, no advanced weapons, just a single combat knife, glinting under the dim light. His stance was relaxed, his breathing calm, as if this was nothing more than a routine exercise. And then he moved. Virex had fought against some of the deadliest warriors in the galaxy, but he had never seen anything like this. The human blurred forward with terrifying speed, weaving through gunfire as if he could predict every shot before it was fired. He struck like lightning, his blade flashing in the dim light, cutting through armor and flesh with precision. The remaining soldiers tried to fight, but it was useless. They were too slow, too clumsy, too afraid. The last of them fell, their bodies collapsing into the blood-soaked dirt, leaving only Virex standing, his rifle trembling in his grip. For a moment, there was silence. The human looked at him, his expression unreadable. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he spoke. "You ran? That was your mistake." And then he vanished into the jungle, leaving Virex alone, surrounded by the bodies of his fallen comrades. The hunt was over. The lesson had been learned. Never run from a human. It only makes the hunt more exciting for them. The Galactic Council had never been so afraid. Across the stars, whispers spread like wildfire, rumors of something unnatural, something beyond understanding. Entire fleets had vanished. Planets once teeming with life were now silent, their cities turned to ruins without a single survivor to tell the tale. The few distress signals that managed to escape spoke of the same horror, an enemy that did not follow the rules of war, an enemy that did not negotiate, an enemy that could not be reasoned with, and at the center of it all, there was only one name: humanity. For centuries, humans had been dismissed as a minor species, a race too young and too inexperienced to matter in the grand scheme of the galaxy. The Council had seen them as unremarkable, their small territories nothing compared to the vast empires that ruled the stars. But then, the HFY Dominion, one of the most powerful warlords in existence, had dared to challenge them. What should have been a swift conquest had instead become a nightmare. The XLRE forces had been eradicated, their fleets destroyed, their homeworld left in flames. No one had understood how it had happened. No one had seen it coming. And now, the question that haunted every ruler, every strategist, every leader in the galaxy was simple. What were the humans hiding? Desperate for answers, the Council sent their best spies, their most advanced probes, their most skilled intelligence officers to uncover the truth. But the more they searched, the less they found. Humanity's territories were shrouded in mystery. Their borders were heavily guarded, their communications encrypted beyond decryption. No alien species had set foot on a human colony in years. It was as if humanity had locked itself away, watching, waiting. The few, Diplomats who had managed to make contact with them described an eerie silence, a cold and calculating efficiency in every human interaction. They never spoke of their military, never showed their true numbers, never revealed what technology they had developed. They were hiding something. And whatever it was terrifying. Then, without warning, a signal arrived. It was not intercepted, nor was it a message sent in secret. It was a direct transmission from humanity itself, broadcasted across every major galactic network. The entire universe listened as a single human, a man with an unreadable expression, appeared on their screens. His voice was calm, emotionless, yet his words carried a weight that sent shivers down the spines of those who heard them. "You want to know the truth?" he said. "You want to understand what happened to the XLR? You want to know why your spies never return? Why your fleets never come back? Why your probes show nothing but silence? You have questions. And now, we will give you the answer." The screen changed, showing footage that no one had ever seen before. It was from the XLR War, but not the battle in space, not the destruction of their fleet. It was what had happened after. The images were unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Solari warriors, some of the strongest and most advanced soldiers in existence, were shown running, screaming, as something hunted them in the darkness. Shadows moved unnaturally fast, figures barely visible in the flickering lights. There was no army, no traditional battle. The XLR were not fighting a war. They were being eliminated. The footage shifted, showing XLR cities in chaos. Their most secure buildings had been breached without alarms being triggered. Their leaders had been taken without a single sign of forced entry. Weapons had failed, defenses had collapsed, entire squads had vanished without a trace. There was no footage of the enemy, only the aftermath. Streets filled with bodies, command centers empty, dread written on the faces of the last remaining survivors before they too disappeared. The human's voice returned. "You believed we were weak because you did not see the truth. You assumed we were primitive because you did not understand our silence. You thought we were just another species, another empire to be conquered. But we are not like you. We never were." The images changed again, showing classified data that had never been accessed before. Human ships were not just warships, they were something else entirely. Their technology was not just advanced, it was beyond comprehension. Their soldiers were not just trained, they were something more. It was as if humanity had evolved beyond war, beyond strategy, beyond anything the galaxy had ever encountered. "We do not fight wars like you do," the human continued. "We do not play by your rules. You see fleets, armies, and weapons. But that is not how we win. That is not how we survive." The XLR learned this too late. They thought they were at war. But they were not. They were being hunted. A chilling realization spread across the council chambers. This was not just about the XLR. This was a warning, a final message to the galaxy. "Do not come for us," the human said, his expression never changing. "Do not cross our borders. Do not test our patience. You wanted to know the truth. Now you do." The transmission ended. Silence filled the galaxy. The terrifying truth had been revealed. Humanity was not just another species. Humanity was something else entirely. The alarms had been ringing for hours. The sky was painted in fire, streaks of plasma tearing through the atmosphere as the last human stronghold braced for impact. On the ruined surface of Terran 5, the remains of Earth's shattered fleet lay scattered like the bones of fallen giants. Smoke and ash clouded the air, and deep within the war-torn city of Nova Bastion, the last soldiers of humanity prepared for the battle that would decide their fate. The enemy was coming, and there would be no reinforcements, no escape. This was the end. Captain Elias Graves stood at the edge of the fortress wall, his rifle slung over his shoulder, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Beyond the burning wreckage of the outer defenses, the enemy forces were assembling. The Xipher Dominion, the most ruthless war machine the galaxy had ever known, had brought everything. Towering war mechs stomped through the rubble, their crimson visors glowing with deadly intent. Thousands of soldiers, their armor black as night, marched in perfect synchronization. Gunships hovered overhead, their cannons humming with energy, waiting for the command to strike. It was an army designed for one purpose: to wipe humanity from existence. Elias exhaled, turning to the soldiers behind him. They were all that was left. Men and women covered in blood and dust, their armor scorched, their faces hardened by battle. They had fought on 100 worlds, watched their homes burn, lost everything they had ever loved. And yet, they were still here, still standing, still refusing to surrender. A transmission crackled in his earpiece. "Captain, they're moving. ET of 5 minutes." The voice belonged to Sergeant Valdez, stationed at the last operational command post. Elias clenched his jaw. "Understood. Hold your positions. No one fires until I give the order." The seconds stretched into eternity as the enemy advanced. The ground trembled beneath the weight of their war machines. The shadows of their ships darkened the ruins. And then, just as the HFY reached the edge of the human defenses, silence fell. For a brief moment, nothing moved. The battlefield was frozen in time. Then, from the center of the HFY ranks, a towering figure stepped forward. The warlord. Clad in obsidian armor, his presence alone sent a wave of dread through the human ranks. He had led the destruction of a dozen human colonies, crushed Earth's fleets, and driven humanity to the brink of extinction. Now, he had come to finish what he had started. His voice, deep and inhuman, echoed across the battlefield. "Humans," he said, "you have lost." Elias felt the weight of those words, but he did not waver. He stepped forward, standing tall against the overwhelming force before him. "You're wrong," he said. "We're still here." The warlord let out a low chuckle. "Not for long." He raised a clawed hand, signaling his forces to advance. The ground shook as the HFY army surged forward, weapons blazing. "Now!" Elias roared. The night exploded in fire and fury. Human railguns lit up the darkness, tearing into the enemy ranks with devastating force. Rockets streaked through the air, slamming into mechs, sending them crashing into the rubble. Machine guns rattled as soldiers held the line, their defiance cutting through the chaos. But the HFY were relentless. Their war mechs absorbed the blasts, returning fire with merciless precision. Soldiers in black armor stormed the trenches, engaging in brutal, close combat. Gunships rained destruction from above, reducing entire buildings to dust. Elias fought like a man possessed, his rifle never missing its mark. He cut down enemy after enemy, his body moving on instinct, dodging plasma bolts by inches. Around him, his soldiers fell one by one, but they did not scream. They did not run. They fought until their last breath. A massive explosion tore through the barricades, sending Elias flying backward. Pain shot through his body as he crashed into the rubble. His vision blurred, but he forced himself to his feet. The warlord was moving toward him, stepping over the bodies of fallen humans, his crimson eyes locked onto Elias. "This is your end," the warlord said. Elias wiped the blood from his mouth and smiled. "Not yet." From the ruins of the command post, a single beacon flared to light. A distress signal, the last one humanity would ever send. But it was not a call for rescue. It was a message, a warning. Far above the battlefield, hidden among the wreckage of the fallen fleet, a dormant ship came to life. Humanity's last weapon, the Judgment. A prototype warship unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Built in secrecy, powered by forbidden technology, its existence had been humanity's greatest secret. And now, it would be their final act. The sky ignited as the Judgment unleashed its fury. A beam of pure energy, brighter than a dying sun, descended upon the battlefield, obliterating the HFY in an instant. Their war mechs melted into slag. Their ships were torn apart. Their soldiers were reduced to ash. The warlord barely had time to turn before the blast consumed him. His final roar of defiance was lost in the storm. When the light faded, the battlefield was silent. The enemy was gone. The ruins of Nova Bastion still stood, battered but unbroken. Humanity had won its last stand. Elias dropped to his knees, exhaustion overtaking him. Around him, the few surviving soldiers looked to the sky, watching as the judgment disappeared into the void, its mission complete. They had no idea what would come next. They had no home to return to, no fleets to protect them. But as long as they still breathed, humanity endured. And that was enough. The Galactic Council chamber was silent. The leaders of 100 alien species sat in tense stillness, their faces pale, their eyes filled with fear. They had gathered here to discuss war, to strategize, to plan their next move against humanity. But now, as the transmission played before them, all thoughts of attack had vanished. The holographic screen displayed nothing but destruction-burning cities, shattered fleets, the ruins of entire civilizations. And the message accompanying it was clear: the lesson is learned. Never make an enemy of humanity. For centuries, the great empires of the galaxy had looked down upon the humans. They were newcomers, a primitive race that had barely stepped beyond their home system. When they first joined the intergalactic community, they had seemed weak, small in number, technologically behind, insignificant. The Council had dismissed them. The warlords had mocked them. Then the Grax Dominion had made the first mistake. A brutal empire, known for enslaving weaker species, they had seen Earth's colonies as nothing more than resources to be harvested. Without warning, they attacked. Their warships descended upon human worlds. Their soldiers stormed through cities. Their leaders laughed as they broadcasted their victory. It had been easy, too easy. They had believed humanity would surrender. But they had not understood what they had awakened. The first retaliation had come swiftly. A single human ship, barely the size of a destroyer, had infiltrated the Grax homeworld's defenses. The Council had expected a simple counterattack, a desperate attempt to strike back. Instead, they had watched in horror as the Grax High Command was wiped out in one night. No alarms had been triggered, no enemy fleet had been detected. But when the sun rose, the entire leadership of the Dominion was gone dead. Their generals, their rulers, their most powerful figures, all eliminated. The humans had not bombed their cities. They had not declared war. They had hunted. And that had only been the beginning. The Grax fleets had mobilized, vowing to crush humanity in revenge. They sent thousands of warships, enough firepower to turn Earth into dust. The Council had been sure of humanity's defeat. They had believed it was over. Then the human warships arrived. Not in great numbers, not in massive fleets, but in shadows. Entire Grax battalions vanished in deep space. Their ships drifted, abandoned, their crews gone without a trace. Planets that had once been under their control found their communications cut. The humans did not fight battles. They waged a war of whispers, of unseen hands that struck in the night, of enemies who never knew they were being hunted until it was too late. In desperation, the Grax sent their final forces to Earth, hoping to end the war with one last decisive blow. But when they arrived, they found nothing. No defenses, no fleet waiting for them. Just a message, broadcasted across every screen in their ships: you wanted war. Now you will understand the cost. Then, one by one, their ships fell silent. No explosions. No energy blasts. Just silence. The Council never learned what happened to those ships. No wreckage was ever found. No distress signals were ever sent. The fleet simply ceased to exist. And with that, the Grax Dominion, once feared across the stars, was no more. Now, as the transmission ended, the leaders of the Galactic Council sat frozen in terror. The lesson had been learned. Humanity was not weak. They were not prey. They were something else entirely, something the galaxy had never seen before. The Council's High Chancellor finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "We cannot fight them." A silence followed, heavy with unspoken fears. The leaders of mighty empires, rulers of countless worlds, had all come to the same realization. If they made an enemy of humanity, they would not face war. They